The committee will reconvene and come to order following our recess. Mr. Bowman, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here. You know, as we all aim to fight and end anti-Semitism once and for all, there is language and there are actions and incidents that take place that are clearly anti-Semitic. And then there are others where someone may have said something or done something that they didn't quite understand, that was wrong. And what I'm hearing from students and people in my district who go to Columbia is they feel that there's not the space for divergent opinions or thoughts as it relates to the state of Israel or what's happening in Gaza right now. Can you speak to how different points of view or perspectives as it relates to the war in Gaza, criticism of the state of Israel, or something like that, that is not anti-Semitic, but just a difference of opinion from other students? How is that adjudicated or confronted? How are we creating spaces for critical dialogue and discussion that may make people feel uncomfortable, but are not like hateful? Can you speak to that first, Madam President, and then we could just go down the line and everyone gives brief comments to that.
Congresswoman, it's a very good point. We launched at the end of last semester a program called Dialogue Across Difference to do exactly what you're saying, which is to give people tools to have difficult conversations where people disagree but are respectful. And so there have been maybe 2 to 3 events per week at Columbia for students and for faculty.
You said per week?
Yes.
Okay.
To practice that sort and model that sort of behavior.
And are those events well attended by students with different points of view coming together and having this dialogue?
That is happening more. I will be candid with you that immediately after October 7th, it
was very hard. It was very hard. Yeah.
But that's changing, and I'm doing it myself personally in my listening sessions with students from both sides of the issues. And again, those have been very emotional.
Okay.
I've had students in tears in those sessions.
Of course. Can we go down quickly? I know I don't have much time. Can we just quickly respond to that? Yep.
Thank you for the question. We are committed to ensuring that students can articulate competing points of view about extremely important issues like the Middle East, like the current war, like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And it would be a really, really unfortunate thing and a departure from our mission as a university if we were suppressing points of view. We absolutely don't want to do that. And at the same time, we have free speech. We also have the responsibility not to engage in discrimination.
Of course. Now, the time is moving, so I'm going to let you answer, but I'm going to shift slightly. How are we also fighting other forms of hate, including Islamophobia, at the university, which I've heard is happening also at the university as well? Can you two quickly respond to that?
We have, look, we're listening to all of our students. All hate is just should not be welcome at Columbia. I've personally met with a large number of Jewish students and a lot of our Muslim students from the region who do feel stressed and scared about walking to class. I mean, we have to listen. And we have to allow for political debate. As Professor Shizer said, that's a bedrock of our democracy. I spent 5 years living in the Soviet Union. I can tell you, you don't want no political debate.
Right.
You don't want the result of that. But we can't let political debate cross into hate.
Never.
We have a special job as an educational institution.
Absolutely. Mr. Greenwald.
All hate is abhorrent. Further, the lessons that we're learning coming out of the task force, those principles will be applicable not just to anti-Semitism, but to other forms of hate as well.
Absolutely. Just to ensure that there are additional voices part of this conversation, I want to enter for the record, I have a letter here from over 600 faculty, staff, students, parents, and alumni of Columbia and Barnard expressing their commitment to open, honest inquiry on campus. I ask unanimous consent to enter the letter into the record.
Without objection.
And in the last 15 seconds that I have, Madam President, can you respond to the there was a so-called chemical attack on campus at one point targeting so-called pro-Palestinian students. Can you quickly respond to that?
Nice.
It appears to have been an odorous substance that was sprayed on demonstrators. The individuals involved have been suspended from Columbia.
Suspended from the school, so they no longer attend the school. The students
Correct.
were involved?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And I yield back.
Damn
Thank
fucking
you.
jail.
Mrs. Steele, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Fox. For over 2 decades, Columbia's Middle Eastern, South Asian, and African Studies Department has been extremely hostile to Israel and Jewish students. Professor Joseph Massad, who vocally praised Hamas, Professor Hamid Dabashi, who has made numerous anti-Semitic remarks, including that Israelis have a vulgarity of character and that is bone deep and structured to the skeletal I can't even pronounce vertebrae of its culture. And Rashid Khalidi, a professor of your university now and former PLO spokesperson, called Columbia Antisemitism Task Force bigots and fanatics and right-wingers and extremists. This is all on the record. And do you think this kind of conduct is appropriate and acceptable? And what universities took, what kind of action that you took after these professors were talking about like this? Yes.
Congresswoman Steele, thank you for that question. Before I answer it, I know Representative Hayes asked me to confirm in writing about ongoing investigations of some of the faculty that you've described. So I just wanted to confirm now that both Professors Massad and Frankie are currently under investigation for discriminatory remarks. So I just wanted to put that on the record for this occasion. On the broader point that you raise, what I would say is that...
Just before you go that, how about the other 2 professors?
I'm going to come to that.
So all 3 of them.
Sorry, which ones are you referring to?
So it's a Professor Joseph Massad.
Yes.
And Professor Hamid Dabashi. And you hired Rashid Khalidi, professor of your university, that former PLO spokesperson.
Yeah. We don't have any ongoing complaints around those other 2 professors. But what I would say is, since I have been in this role, which is, I'm just entering my 9th month, we have put in place mechanisms so that if faculty cross the line in terms of any harassing or discriminatory behavior, there will be consequences. We can remove people from leadership roles. We can discipline. We can remove them from the classroom. We can, in some cases, have removed them from Columbia altogether, and we have several cases like that. So we are making sure that going forward, faculty who cross the line and discriminate or harass students on any issue there will be consequences.
Yeah, you know what? I'm not just making up. This happened, and this is the statement that we just took it out from the newspapers and other media. So you really have to find out. So nothing really happened. These 3 university professors, that what they were talking about, Israelis. And then let's just move then. Columbia alumni have called on university place the department into academic receivership, as it has done for its English and anthropology departments. Will you consider placing the department into receivership?
I guess academic departments at Columbia are, there isn't really a notion of receivership, but what I would say is one of the things that I'm very committed to is we have a broad offering of almost 50 courses on Israeli, Jewish, and Middle Eastern studies at Columbia. But we also have an opportunity, I think, at this moment, because so many students are interested and there's so much demand and need, frankly, for education about these issues, that we are looking at expanding and hiring some new faculty to try and broaden our approach to make sure that we have some new and fresh thinking in the areas of Israeli, Jewish, and Middle East studies.
So what kind of broader thinking and what kind of expansion you're talking about?
We will be hiring additional faculty going forward that will bring new perspectives.
But you're going to do all those background checks and their records, though, because your professors already talk about this kind of, statements, and this is not really acceptable.
We will do all the background checks that you would expect for our faculty, because it's a privilege to teach at Columbia.
So it's not just English and anthropology department, but do you consider the Middle Eastern, South Asian, and African studies department balanced and well-run departments? Because over 2 decades, they were extremely hostile to Israel.
Thank you, Ms. Steele. We'll get answers to your questions. Ms. Omar, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. President Shafiq, I wanted to get a clarification earlier. One of my colleagues asked you, have you seen anti-Muslim protests on campus?
I have seen, we have had pro-Israeli demonstrations on campus.
No.
But
just
not
a protest that was
not,
against Muslims.
No, I have
Have you
not
seen one against Arabs?
No, I have not.
Have you seen one against Palestinians?
No, I have not.
Have you seen one against Jewish people? Have you seen a protest saying we are against Jewish people?
No, I have seen,
okay, thank you for that clarification. There has been a rise in targeting and harassment against anti-war protesters, because it's been pro-war and anti-war protesters is what it seems like, correct?
Correct. There has been...
Thank you. Activists on campus, including Jewish students, Black and Brown, Arab and Muslim students. How many of the organizations that were canceled in Columbia involved Jewish students?
One of the organizations is called Jewish Voices for Peace.
Yes. And encompassed of Jewish students?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. There was there's been a recent attack on the democratic rights of students across the country. I was appalled to learn that in April, Columbia suspended and evicted 6 students for their involvement in the pro-Palestinian panel event on campus. It happened that all 6 students were arbitrarily targeted after the university brought in a team of private and former police investigators. These investigators harassed, intimidated Palestinian students at their homes, demanding to see students' private text messages, and sent threatening emails to the leaders of those pro-Palestinian groups. I would like to ask you to speak a little bit more to this situation and ask you if you guys have utilized private former police investigators before, or is this the first time?
So this was a very serious case. We had students who, on an online
call... If you could shorten your answer, that would be really appreciated.
Of course, who invited people who were inciting violence, and that is unacceptable. And so we needed to get to the bottom of it, and so that's why we brought private investigators along with notifying the FBI. How secure
were you these students that you evicted and suspended were involved? Did you do any investigation? Was there a hearing?
They refused to cooperate with the investigation, and so until they do so, they are suspended.
Okay, thank you. And then in January, there was an incident involving students that were protesting that were attacked with a toxic chemical substance, leaving many hospitalized. A lot of them did not receive support from the school administrators. Can you speak to what is happening with the investigation, if you all are cooperating, and why weren't the students provided any support after they've experienced that attack?
So this is still with the police, and as far as we know, we think it was an odorous substance, and And we did reach out to all of those students who said they were affected. Many of them didn't want support. We also
It
reached
took
out.
you guys more than 4 days to reach out to students.
No, I don't believe that's correct.
Okay, will you
actually.
respond, give me a written response with the fact that you all responded right away to those students?
Yes, I would be happy to do that.
All right, appreciate that. And it looks like there's been a lot of doxing and harassment that has taken place. What protections are a student being provided?
We created a doxing resources group to support students. There were many students who were affected by this. Muslim students, Jewish students, and completely, other students. That group has, we had 90 students reach out to that group to get support in terms of both technical support, legal support, privacy scrubbing, and so on.
And before I run out of time, I wanted to ask what do your rules say about professors that harass students online, like Professor Shai Davidar has done, and professors who directly attack you as the president as a coward and a liar?
So, as president, I'm used to being attacked, but attacking our students is unacceptable, and in that case, we've had more than 50 complaints about that professor, and he is currently under investigation for harassment and
I would love a
discrimination.
follow-up on that as well. Thank you so much. I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Kiley, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
President Shalvik, earlier today the question was posed, are chants of From the River to the Sea anti-Semitic? And Professor Scheitzer, head of the Anti-Semitism Task Force at Columbia, I guess you gave a very clear answer. Yes. You, on the other hand, hemmed and hawed, and then eventually said, I hear them as such, some people don't. What are you talking about there? Who are these people that you're referring to?
Well, I think even surveys by the Anti-Defamation League and others have shown that that some Jewish people don't hear that as anti-Semitic, whereas I would say the majority do. So it's one of those phrases that is heard differently by
many. So that's who you're referring to, is Jewish population, some sector of it?
Yeah, yes, and I have received letters from our Jewish faculty who say that they also don't think it is anti-Semitic. But I think Congressman, I think you put your finger on a challenging issue. We have sent a message to our community. All of the deans of Columbia University, all 17 of them for the first time, wrote a letter to the community saying, these words are hurtful and are heard in a hurtful
that's good,
way.
and I'm glad that Professor Scheitzer was able to give us a very clear answer, yes, but you weren't able to do so. And I think if I were to go through a number of other racial slurs and ask you if those are offensive, if these are racist, I don't think you'd say, I hear them as such, some people don't, would you?
I'm happy to give you my personal opinion, but I think the question that you're really asking me is, are they forbidden to be said at Columbia?
That's not what I'm asking, actually.
Okay, all right, well then I'm happy
I think
to give
we saw your instinct is that I'm wondering, who are you worried about offending? That's my question.
No. I feel like I'm speaking as president of Columbia, so that's the way in which I'm answering
let's talk
these
about
questions.
Columbia. Are there anti-Semitic professors on your faculty?
I certainly hope not, and if I have any evidence that there are, there
You don't
will
think
be
there's evidence
consequences.
of anti-Semitism among professors on your faculty?
We have seen some cases, and there have been consequences.
So you mentioned Mr. Abdu and Mr. Masad. You said they're both under investigation. Is that correct?
Mr. Masad is under investigation. Mr. Abdu has been told he will not work at Columbia again.
He's been fired.
He is leaving.
I don't understand the distinction there. Fired versus he's leaving.
Yeah, no, he's leaving, and he has a written record on his record that
so
says
he wasn't fired, but he's
employed.
voluntarily leaving.
No. He's been told he cannot.
Has to leave.
He has been told he has to leave.
Okay. Do you think he is anti-Semitic?
He has written and said things which are in support of Hamas, which I find very problematic. And
when, by the way, was he told to leave?
I want to make sure I have the right date for you, but it was in the sometime in the last few weeks is my recollection.
In
but
the last how long?
I'd be happy to get it to you in writing because I want to make sure I give you the right date.
Did you retain counsel in preparation for this hearing?
We had lots of, we did a lot of preparation for this hearing, yes.
Okay. How many hours did you say you spent preparing?
Well, this is a very, very serious matter, and so I have spent many, many hours.
Many hours. And you've given us very divergent responses as to some of the worst offending professors about how they've been handled. And why is that? Why can't you just give us the facts?
I've offered to give you the facts. I'm happy to provide you with the details. I just don't recall the exact date when he was notified, and I want to make sure I'm give you an accurate answer. It's a very serious matter.
Would you be willing to make just a statement right now to any members of the faculty at your university that if they engage in anti-Semitic words or conduct, that they should find another place to work? Can you make that statement?
I would be happy to make a statement that anyone, any faculty member at Columbia who behaves in an anti-Semitic way or in any way a discriminatory way should find somewhere else to go.
Thank you. Do you believe that the BDS movement is anti-Semitic?
Columbia has on numerous occasions refused to, that's not the right way, has faced the issue of BDS. In fact, we had a proposal.
But do you think it's anti-Semitic,
recently.
the BDS movement?
I think it's a political movement that is advocating a boycott or a sanctioning process, which is.
So once again, who are you worried about offending by making a very clear statement on this?
No, I'm not making. I'm happy to make a clear statement on it.
Okay. Well, I want to close my questioning by giving you an opportunity to address some of the students who are here, because we have some really courageous students who have come, who have testified, who have met with our committee, who were at our press conference this morning. Many of them behind you, many of them couldn't get into the room because it was too small, and they've told harrowing stories of what they've endured on your campus, and they say that the response of your administration has been inadequate, has been insufficient. So are they wrong? I mean, what would you say to these students?
I have met with these students myself. In fact, I've met many of the students who are in this room, and we have talked about it. And I think I have assured them that there are times when I have been very frustrated with the policies and capacity that we have at Columbia to respond to this, but I have been working tirelessly to fix those problems and improve our response. And I think we can show concrete improvements in the way we've been handling anti-Semitism during my time.
Thank you, Mr. Kiley. Ms. McBath, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman Fox and Ranking Member Scott. Thank you to those of you that are here as our witnesses today. I've read your testimonies. We've had a multiple of hearings on this issue of anti-Semitism on campuses, and I really do appreciate the Chair's commitment to continuing to have these conversations. Thank you. During one of them, I brought up the Anti-Defamation League's most recent data from their annual audit of anti-Semitic incidents, and I shared alarming data about the frequency of these acts of hate. Last time this data was published, it translated to over 10 incidents a day, a disturbing amount that's truly in its own right. According to the newest data published just a few days ago, that number has now skyrocketed to 24 incidents per day, basically one per hour. This is absolutely heartbreaking and truly unacceptable, and it shows the depth of the work that we must continue to champion. Work like the President's national strategy to counter anti-Semitism and providing the support necessary to the Office of Civil Rights at the Department of Education. Increasing funding would truly ensure that the resources necessary are available so that we can look back a year from now and hopefully be able to say that we did not have the highest number of anti-Semitic incidents on record, but that is unfortunately not something that I've been able to do or see during my 5 years here serving on this committee. My community in metropolitan Atlanta, home to the largest Jewish community in the Deep South, is no stranger to any of these kinds of incidents. We see more hatred in our discourse and more violence in our communities than we've ever seen before. Time and time again, anti-Semitic vandalism and white supremacist symbols appear in our neighborhoods, in the districts that I represent. And we've stood together in condemning them. Now, I understand how important it is for all in our community to support one another, regardless of our faith, regardless of our ethnicity. Many people do not know that a large number of the supporters of the NAACP were Jewish or of communities' collective history and common interests. My father was branch president of the Illinois NAACP during the Civil Rights Movement. And I distinctly remember when our local Jewish community stood up to support us as we were on the front line fighting for civil and human rights. And one community that was one of the first to voice support for those of us that were fighting on the front lines. And that had a very serious impact on me. A Jewish professor at Columbia served as NAACP chair in the early 1900s, and I am proud to carry on our long partnership in the fight against racism, hatred, and anti-Semitism. To know that your community stands with you in your greatest hour of need, it means absolutely everything. Mr. Shizer, do you know if Columbia is currently taking any steps to renew their strong legacy of interracial and interreligious connections on campus?
I will say this. I am moved by what you said, and I completely agree with it. Issues like racism and anti-Semitism are not partisan issues. They're American issues. And in that spirit, I know President Shafiq has been emphasizing how important it is for us all to come together. And we may not agree. I mean, we absolutely should not agree on everything, but we need to treat each other with respect. And I think her leadership on that issue has been extremely important.
Well, thank you for that. So can you then please just talk a little bit about their importance and what building those connections and relationships actually looks like on campus?
Were you at? Yes, President.
Congressman, I completely agree with you, and I think one of the things I've said over and over is that anti-Semitism isn't a problem for Jewish people to solve. It's actually a problem for all of us, and you, I think, said it much better than I have ever said it. We are looking at how to invest more in interfaith dialogue at Columbia. We have a group. I have met with them, but I think at this particular moment, it merits further support in order to rebuild our community.
Well, thank you so much. I do appreciate all the efforts that I believe everyone in this room really is making. I truly believe in humanity. I truly believe in our ability to put our differences aside for the common good, and I hope that everyone in this room would find it a time such as now to do so. And I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. McBath. Mr. Bean, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good afternoon. Columbia beats Harvard and UPenn. Y'all have done something that they weren't able to do. You've been able to condemn anti-Semitism without using the phrase, it depends on the context. But the problem is, the action on campus doesn't match your rhetoric today. And you're saying the right things. You're saying we're not going to tolerate it, but we see the videos. We see what's happening on social media. And just this morning, all of these students, your students, their message is quite different. Their message is one of fear. How about that? They can't walk across campus without getting the F word yelled at them, F Jews, Intifada, all kinds of things. My heart aches for them. It should be hard academically at Columbia, but it shouldn't be hard to walk across campus, and it is. So words don't match your actions. And you can have 200 meetings. You can put people on double secret probation as you have. You can write very strongly worded letters. Don't ever do it again. But that's not solving the problems. Look at the fear in their eyes right now. One of them said this morning in a press conference that we got to spend some time with that security on campus, are you ready for this? Security on campus told them, remove anything that identifies you as Jewish when things get hot. That's the way to stay safe on Columbia's campus is don't look Jewish and you'll be safe. Is that your policy, Madam President? To stay safe, just don't look Jewish?
Not at all. And I think
So the stuff, have you met with them? I know you've met. I know you met with them 200 times. But why is their message different from yours? Why are they saying it happens all the time, every week, going to class? Are you aware of that? It's a yes or no question. Are you aware that there's a problem on campus? You're aware? Yes is the right answer. You're aware. As president of the board, Ms. Shipman, thank you for being here. Are you aware, though, that this once prestigious university's reputation is just going down the toilet because of all of the anti-Semitism that's flourishing on campus? Are you aware?
I'm aware of how serious this moment is. I appreciate your urgency. We're not done. I recognize
have we quadrupled security on campus? Have we expelled students? How many students have we expelled?
We have massively increased our security capacity.
Have we expelled anybody? There's so many hate groups on campus. I want y'all to know there's got to be. This is America. It's 2024, and you shouldn't fear going to the library just because of your faith. Madam Chair, I yield the rest of my time to the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Stefanik.
Dr. Shafiq, you answered one of the questions of our colleagues across the aisle. You said there has been no anti-Jewish protests. Do the other individuals on the panel agree with that? Start with you, Professor Skizzer.
So I think there have been anti-Semitic protests, so I would say yes.
So you disagree? There have been anti-Jewish protests. Ms. Shipman?
I know there have been a number of incidents, especially one at our law school recently, that the students were trying to call a protest, but it was an event to harass admitted students who were Jewish, and it's outrageous.
So that's anti-Jewish. So the answer would be yes?
Yes.
And Mr. Greenwald?
There have been anti-Semitic events on campus, which I interpret as anti-Jewish.
And Dr. Shafiq, you realize that at some of these events, the slurs and the chants have been F the Jews, death to Jews,
yep.
F Israel, no safe place, death to the Zionist state, Jews out. You don't think those are anti-Jewish?
Completely anti-Jewish, completely unacceptable.
So you changed your testimony on that issue as well? So there have been anti-Jewish protests?
I didn't get to finish my sentence, so what I was going to say was there were protests that were called
That's not what you were asked. You were asked, were there any anti-Jewish protests? And you said no.
So the protest was not labeled as an anti-Jewish protest.
I'm not asking what it was labeled.
Anti-Israeli government policy.
The question wasn't what it was labeled.
But anti-Semitic incidents happen, or anti-Semitic things were said. So I just wanted
It is
to
an
finish.
anti-Jewish protest. You agree with that? You change your testimony?
Congresswoman, anti-Jewish things were said at protests, yes.
Thank you for changing your testimony. Another instance when you changed your testimony is you stated that Professor Mossad was no longer chair. Then you stated he's under investigation. He is still chair on the website. So has he been terminated as chair?
Congresswoman, I want to confirm the facts before getting back to you.
I know you confirmed that he was under investigation.
Yes, I can confirm that.
Did you confirm he was still the chair?
I need to confirm that with you.
Well, let me ask you this. Will you make the commitment to remove him as chair?
I think that would be, I would, yes. Let me come back with yes. But I think I just want to confirm his current status before I write.
We'll take that as a yes, that you will confirm that he will no longer be chair.
Mr. Bean's time has expired. Mr. Scott, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
She ate her fucking lunch.
I'm sorry. You want to be last. Ms. Chavez de Remer, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank the witnesses for being here today. The widespread anti-Semitism we're seeing on college campuses is one of the most important issues in higher education. Since the horrific terror attacks of October 7th, Jewish students have found themselves constantly under attack for simply being Jewish. Dr. Shafiq, Columbia has been one of the worst offenders. I place that responsibility of campus safety right at the feet of university presidents, and in this case, it's you. Jewish students fear for their lives at your university. They have been harassed, threatened, and assaulted by fellow classmates. But it's no wonder students think this is okay. They're learning in class how to target Jews. At our hearing with the presidents of MIT, Harvard, and UPenn, I highlighted the astonishingly low number of courses being offered on Jewish history. Dr. Shafiq, I also looked into your university's course offerings for this semester. You only have 3 classes that teach the history of Israel. 2 of them are taught by Israelis and Jews, but those 2 classes combined only have 30 seats. But the 3rd class can have up to 60 students, and that class, of course, is taught by Joseph Mossad, someone this committee is all too familiar with. Joseph Mossad has been surrounded by controversy for his anti-Semitic rhetoric since the early 2000s. He praised the brutal attack, as we've heard today, of Hamas on October 7th as awesome, astonishing, and astounding. He called the videos that showed murder and rape of Israeli women stunning. Dr. Shafiq, I've been to the towns attacked by Hamas. Let me tell you, there is nothing awesome or astounding about the rape and murder of thousands of innocent civilians. Dr. Shafiq, Joseph Mossad has been a problem for more than 20 years. Why haven't you shown that anti-Semitism is not tolerated at your university by firing him? I know you've commented already on that today. Does Columbia support this type of speech?
No, and as I said, he is under investigation. But I also, if I may, speak to your question about our course offerings. Before this hearing, the 2 directors of our Institute for Israel and Jewish Studies came to see me, and they said to me, make sure the committee knows that Columbia is not a hotbed of anti-Semitism, but that we are a pioneer in Jewish studies.
But 2 classes is not going to prolifically tell that to the world, and that's what the story that needs to be told. And excuse me, Dr. Mossad is a tenured professor, but that doesn't mean he can't be fired, correct? Can he be fired?
There are some very complex issues around tenure.
So at Columbia University, quote, an appointment with tenure may be terminated for cause only when a faculty member is found to be professionally unfit, as demonstrated, for example, by gross inefficiency, habitual and intentional neglect of duty, other serious breaches of academic conduct, or serious personal misconduct. Dr. Shafiq, you told Congressman Wahlberg earlier today that if given the opportunity to grant Dr. Mossad a tenured position today, you would not. In your opinion, has his anti-Semitic conduct risen to being professionally unfit, or a serious breach of academic conduct, or serious professional misconduct?
As I said, he is being investigated.
So he can be fired according to this quote?
According to our rules, there are certain conditions under which tenured faculty
Okay, moving on. As I said back in December, the most powerful mover of campus culture is education itself. And you said that today. We can stop this if we educate the future about Israel. And again, those classes do not prove that you're taking action with what you said. But Columbia has shown through its choices on faculty and, of course, offerings that you don't care about anti-Semitism, that you'll turn a blind eye to the attacks on the most persecuted people of the last 5,000 years. That's why you've let Joseph Mossad teach at a class bigger than all the other Israeli history classes combined. That's why you continue to allow your Jewish students to be harassed, threatened, and assaulted on your campus. And Dr. Shafiq, you said earlier today that the best way to combat anti-Semitism is through that education. So I'm going to say it once again. So since there are only 3 undergrad courses Columbia offers on Jewish and Israeli history, will you commit to pushing your deans to add more courses on Jewish history and remove those who teach and praise anti-Semitic violence like Joseph Mossad?
Our Institute for Israeli and Jewish Studies offers 21 courses. We have a collaborative arrangement with the Jewish Theological Seminary, and many of the students who are doing the joint degree with the Jewish Theological Seminary are here.
It's
so
time your Jewish students finally
extensive.
see that you actually care about their safety. Teach these classes and fire the racists. It's a pretty low bar. We'll be watching to see if you do that, and Madam Chair, I yield back my time.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You know, I'm really puzzled about how a university with such a prestigious reputation, such immense resources, and with such a storied history arrived at such a dissolute and depraved place. Very stunning. Just to address these questions to the board members, in the last 20 years, have there been Columbia professors or students who have been forced to retire or leave the university because of denouncements by fellow staff members or accusations by students, pressures from outside groups?
I've been on the board, this is my 6th year on the board, but I don't recall actions of that nature happening.
Ms. Shipman?
Yeah, I've been on the board 10 years, and neither do I.
Professor Serban, you don't recall his leaving, believes that the university was communist, was his words. You don't recall that?
No.
Professor Shizer, you've been there some years. Are you aware, publicly or privately, that any of your colleagues have left the university either because they believe their beliefs aren't welcome or because they feel like they have no upward mobility because of their beliefs?
I'm not remembering a case like that, sir.
So no one's come to you privately and said, "Hey, Columbia's not the place for me. This is hostile because of I'm a conservative, or I'm Jewish, or I hold any beliefs that seem to be contrary to the university."
Look, I'm a conservative at Columbia Law School. I was dean for 10 years. The place has been good to me.
Are there a lot of people like you, or are you afraid to speak out?
But I do want to say that I am not the norm, and I'd love more conservatives.
So, how much investment, again to the board members, how much investment has Columbia received by foreign governments, their donors, or significant donations from foreign individuals, from countries like China, Qatar, Saudi Arabia? I know that the committee's asked for that information. Do you have that number for us today?
I don't have that number to hand.
Are you aware of significant donations from any of those locations to the university in your tenure in 6 years?
I'm aware that we receive funds from at least some of those countries.
Which ones specifically?
I don't remember all the ones you mentioned. Did you mention China, sir?
I did.
Okay. China sends many students to Columbia University, and my understanding is the state pays their tuition.
President Shafiq, are faculty and staff required to sign DEI statements to be employed or to continue their employment at Columbia?
No.
They're not required to provide DEI statements. I'm pretty sure that's part of your employment process, isn't that right?
No, I think some departments ask faculty to talk about what they bring that's different to that department or to that role. And that's an optional thing that they can add to an employment.
It's optional, and if you refuse to, then it has no bearing on your hiring at the school? Is that really what you're saying?
Frankly, I think it depends on the needs of that particular department. You know, if the math department or the biology department or the neuroscience department has issues around, they're missing certain perspectives on their faculty, they might pay more attention to it. Others might not. I think it's very much dependent on.
So the DEI policy at Columbia doesn't require statements from faculty administrators in order as part of their HR process. That's what you're saying?
We don't have a central DEI office at Columbia. We have schools and faculties who think about what are the different perspectives that they've got on their faculty, and then they make choices about what's missing in terms of perspectives, backgrounds, skills that are needed for the faculty, and that they have people who are working on those issues at the school and departmental level.
Personally, I think that you're in deep denial about the culture at Columbia in terms of the actual openness to views that differ from the culture of the school, where your money comes from, the disruption of classes, and the DEI statements. I just want to enter into the record, Madam Chairwoman, a webpage from the U.S. Holocaust Museum website that describes the Nazi takeover of German universities in the 1930s. And frankly, I see the parallels as striking. It's entitled German Universities in the Nazi Regime, something like that. And it really talks about that there were denouncements of professors for views that weren't consistent. It talks about the influence of outside groups, particularly money. Where statements of loyalty were required in order to continue at the university, and that the teaching quality dropped significantly because politics and adherence to politics triumphed over
Thank you,
adherence
Mr. Williams.
to
Without objection, what you're requesting will be placed in the record.
academic excellence. Thank you. I yield.
Mr. Moran, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Seems
There
like he
are
just
times
took a
in my
shot.
district when constituents ask me frequently whether committee hearings have real, tangible purpose and are effective in creating change. In answer to that question, I need only point to the series of committee hearings that the House Committee on Education and the Workforce has held over the past 6 months on anti-Semitism in higher education to resoundingly answer yes. These hearings do make a difference and do create change. I think it's clear today that this panel has learned at least some of the lessons from the magnificent failures of Harvard, MIT, and UPenn when they appeared here several months back. What is my question still remaining is whether or not it's just talk or whether or not real action will follow to change what has occurred on the campus of Columbia University. I had a whole series of questions prepared on a number of different circumstances and people and what they said and what the responses were, but my colleagues before me have actually covered most of that. So here's what I really want to talk about today, because I think that there's a foundational issue behind all of this. It's a foundational issue about truth. I think one of the reasons why it's been difficult for university presidents to sit before us and to actually answer questions affirmatively is because they fear declaring what they know to be truth. They're fearing the pushback. I happen to believe that there are absolute truths in this world. Truths that are objective and not subjective. Truths that should stand even when it is unpopular or when it is hard. I want to ask each one of you on the panel, do you agree with that statement? Dr. Shafiq.
Congressman Moran, I can assure you I am not afraid of telling the truth, and I am not afraid of doing things that might be unpopular.
No, that wasn't my question. Do you believe that there are absolute truths in this world that are objectively true?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Ms. Shipman?
Yes, I agree.
Good. Mr. Greenwald?
Yes.
Good. I happen to think that one of these absolute truths is that each person in this world was created with equal and eternal value. Do you agree with that, Dr. Shafiq?
I do.
Definitely.
Certainly.
Yes.
These are what are called softball questions. And what I can tell you is I'm afraid that actually some of the people that you employ and some of your colleagues at other institutions actually don't believe that. But their greater question is, are you going to enforce that? Are you going to apply those principles? Are you going to apply that truth? I want to commend Mr. Greenwald for some of the very direct answers that you've given today. Because quite honestly, we haven't heard direct answers. And from a few of you today, you've given some good answers today, some things that we need to hear. But we need to see action, not just hearing it here today, because there's a lot of students here today that needed your action in the last 6 months, and you haven't given the action they need to push back against the untruth that is in this world, that is prevalent on your campus. There is a major difference between knowledge of truth, understanding of the basis of that truth, and wisdom and courage in the application in that truth. And what we need is the wisdom and courage from you, Dr. Shafiq, to apply the principles that you purport to stand for, and to apply the truth that you just evidenced here today, and make sure that your actions follow your words today. Only time will tell whether your words here today are hollow or whether the actions are truly to follow. I yield to the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Stefanik.
Ms. Shipman, was there an effort to get other trustees to sign a letter supporting President Shafiq?
No.
There was not?
No.
Will you comply with all document requests related to email correspondence regarding any potential letter?
We have...
Because board members have come forward anonymously to this committee raising the issue of a letter that was circulated that members of the boards did not sign on in support. Are you testifying today under oath? You have no knowledge of any draft letter in support of Dr. Shafiq?
No knowledge whatsoever, and my understanding is we're fully complying and ready to give you whatever you need.
Mr. Greenwald, are you aware of any letter that was circulated?
No, that's surprising to me.
Professor David, are you aware?
Not at all.
My final question is, there's been a lot of discussion on Columbia's putting out a statement calling for the genocide of Jews. That statement was put out after the catastrophically morally repugnant answers by your colleagues from MIT, Penn, and Harvard, correct? That was when you put out that statement after that hearing?
Congresswoman, you shed a light on an important issue.
I'm just asking when you put it out. It was after that hearing.
It was definitely after it because
and you are aware that
obvious.
You are aware that Congress voted 377 to 44 condemning anti-Semitism. That is a strong bipartisan vote. Would you support that vote, condemning anti-Semitism? Yes. And you are aware that in that bill that got 377 members out of 435 members of Congress condemns From the River to the Sea as anti-Semitic.
Yes, I am aware of that.
But you don't believe From the River to the Sea is anti-Semitic?
We have already issued a statement to our community saying that language is hurtful and we would prefer not to hear it on our campus.
You'd prefer not to hear it, or is there disciplinary action taken against students of those anti-Semitic statements?
Thank you, Ms. Stefanik.
I want an answer to that question.
Sorry. I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah.
Has there been disciplinary action taken against students who have chanted From the River to the Sea, which you have testified is anti-Semitic and which Congress has voted that it is anti-Semitic?
So we have some disciplinary cases ongoing around that language. We have specified that those kind of chants should be restricted in terms of where they happen.
We need
and
you
we are
to wrap
looking
it
at
up, Dr. Shafi.
We are looking at it.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
The ranking member is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Scherzer, Professor Scherzer, you've indicated the tension between protesting the war and anti-Semitism. How do you prevent gatherings from going from one to the other?
I think, sir, that there are two things that we need to do. One is to be very clear, and the President has been, and the trustees have been, that free and open exchange is critical. And the second is to make very clear, and I believe we have, that discrimination, harassment, and hate are unacceptable. And it is entirely appropriate for people to take a view about the war in Gaza. People can oppose it, people can support it. What you can't do is
and you're trying to enforce student behavior on this. How would it be helpful if language in a bill that this committee reported on a party line vote requiring saying that a public institution may not prohibit a person, not a student, a person, from freely engaging in non-commercial expressive activity in generally accessible areas on an institution's campus if the person's conduct is lawful. How would you be able to deal with that? That'd be helpful in trying to keep anti-Semitism off campus.
So I would need to study that language, sir, but I will say that having a place where speech is robust and permitted is very appropriate and necessary, and it is in fact
this is the whole campus.
So I would not support speech anywhere at any time. I think we need classes to take place. We don't want them disrupted, but we need protests and we need speech just to be in the right place.
Ms. Shipman, you were asked a question about what it says about the situation when this is the 4th hearing we've had to have on anti-Semitism. What does it say when there have been no hearings on racism, homophobia, Islamophobia, or how you can make campuses safe for transgender students?
What is my thought about that?
Don't you think we should have had some hearings? Are those not problems?
Look, we have a specific problem right now on our campus, so I can speak from what I know, and that is rampant anti-Semitism. And this hearing is hard and helpful for us at this moment. I certainly think, because I've heard from a lot of students on our campus in my time on the board, we would benefit from broader hearings about hate in general. And as I've said, I think we have a broader societal problem that's reflected in a really divisive way on college campuses.
But anti-Semitism is the only one we ought to be addressing, not racism, homophobia.
We certainly address all of it. We have no tolerance for any of that on our campus. But
Islamophobia. how
I've
trans
spent-
students,
I
and
have
we've had,
spent time-
we've had
I've-
hearing, during these hearings, we've had some, members disparage trans students in the middle of the hearing on anti-Semitism. Shouldn't we be having hearings making sure all students can be safe?
I understand that sentiment, Congressman, and I have spent a significant amount of time with some of our Muslim students from the region, and their stories are also heartbreaking. And I don't like that any student on our campus does not feel safe. But I think what we see most routinely right now is political speech crossing the line into anti-Semitism, and we have got to figure that out.
And so, we don't address the fact that black students may not feel safe, gay students, Muslim students. Let me ask another question, Ms. Shafiq. If someone says something that's anti-Semitic, should they all, what should the sanction be?
It depends what they say, who they say it to, what context it's in, but in any situation, we would pursue disciplinary action.
Should they always,
And that
should
isn't
they
just
always
for-
be expelled?
No, I mean, I think, expulsion is a very extreme act, but we're an educational institution, so we've got to start by educating our students to not say certain things and change the culture so that nobody is discriminated or harassed at all. That should be our objective.
Thank you. So you would try to fit the sanction with the seriousness of the crime,
absolutely,
the context, and hopefully use it as an educational opportunity.
Agree.
Thank you. Thank you. You back. Okay. Yeah.
I now recognize the ranking member for a closing statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, let's ask unanimous consent to enter in the record the article Columbia's Own Middle East War from January 19, 2005 that provides additional nuance on the issue of professors at Columbia. And also unanimous consent to enter into the record a report from the University of Chicago's Project on Security and Threats, analyzing the fear both Jewish and Muslim students feel on campus and how that fear often results from miscommunication. And another, enter into the record a letter from Ted Mitchell, President of the American Council on Education, to Chairwoman Fox and Ranking Member and myself, outlining the concerns he and the organization have with H.R. 7683, the bill that I referenced, including the following quote: given the committee's recent focus on concerns regarding anti-Semitism and the need for campuses to increase their efforts to provide safe environments free from discrimination for all students, we are puzzled by the bill's inclusion of a provision that would tie the hands of campus administrators to address these issues and potentially make campuses less safe.
Without objection.
Madam Chair, we all agree that Jewish students should be entitled to a safe learning experience at all colleges. In fact, all students ought to be entitled to the same. This is the fourth hearing we've had on anti-Semitism, none on racism, homophobia, Islamophobia, transgender. In fact, the Office of Civil Rights budget has been cut by the Republican budget. Excuse me. And we've reported a bill that would actually create more problems. I think the Office of Civil Rights has indicated that they get a lot more complaints from racism, homophobia, Islamophobia, and trans students. And those need to also be addressed, and I hope the committee would somehow promote the safety of all students, not just one group.
Take a drink of water.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. We're deeply disturbed by what we're seeing at Columbia and by many of the things we've heard in today's hearing. It's important to set the record straight on a few things. President Shafiq testified there have been 15 suspensions related to anti-Semitic incidents. That's misleading. In fact, between October 7 and March 23, after months of anti-Semitic incidents, only 3 students were given interim suspensions for anti-Semitic conduct. All 3 were lifted or dropped to probation, including a student who repeatedly harassed students, screaming, "F the Jews." Of the 10 suspensions that came in response to the Resistance 101, 5 were lifted because Columbia determined they were not involved. The only 2 Columbia students who remained suspended for incidents related to October 7th that took place before we called Dr. Shafiq to testify are the 2 Jewish students suspended for spraying the odorous substance Representative Omar referred to. Dr. Shafiq's testimony was misleading there too. Documents Columbia produced to the committee show that the substance sprayed was a non-toxic gag spray. While that was an inappropriate action, for months Jewish students have been vilified with false accusations of a, quote, chemical attack, end quote, and Columbia failed to correct the record. And radical anti-Semitic faculty remain a huge problem throughout Columbia. At the Middle Eastern Studies Department, School of Social Work, School of Public Health, Law School, and many others. And multiple Columbia departments have been placed into receivership in the past 20 years. If Columbia takes this seriously, it's a remedy worth pursuing. While some changes have begun on campus, there is still a significant amount of work to be done, as we've heard today. We will be looking for answers to the questions that have been raised today in a very timely fashion, and we are prepared to bring you back if we don't see more tangible progress. I thank our witnesses again for being here today. I thank all the members who have attended to help us gather the information we've gathered. Without objection, there being no further business, the committee stands adjourned.
Yo, she's a fucking gangster. And all them women there, well, not all of them, one of them was not that great, but fuck, they were in there eating some lunch, bro. That shit was wild. I can't wait to cut some shorts out of this.